Okay, so today we are going to talk on microbial interactions and infection. So this lecture will be based on how the microbes, especially pathogens, are interacting with the host. So this is called parasite, host-parasite interaction and microbial host interaction, in which we talk about how the infection is established, what are the prerequisites for infection in the light of the Robert Koch postulates as we discussed earlier. Microbial antagonism, that is competitive exclusion, what does it mean? It means the normal microbiota prevent the overgrowth of harmful microbes. It means there is a relation between microorganisms, different species of microorganisms within the host system, where one of the microorganism or microbial type of a species inhibit the growth of others. So this is called microbial antagonism phenomenon. What is the mechanism of microbial antagonism? They compete for the nutrients. For example, there are two microorganisms living in the same niche or same area, same location site. One of the microorganisms is competing the other on the nutrients. So the other one, which is just like a survival for fittest, so other one which cannot survive in the presence of other microorganisms because of the depletion or the exhaustion of the microbial nutrients consumed by the other microbes, which inhibit the other microbes. It produces the antimicrobial substances also. Sometimes, for example, fungus, notatum fungus, Aspergillus niger, and Penicillium notatum, and many more fungus which are present. Now these fungus, they are growing in the close association with the bacterial population, right? So the bacterial population may be inhibited by the antibiotics or the substances produced by these fungus molecule or fungus organism. So it produces antimicrobial agents or antimicrobial substances which can inhibit the growth of bacteria. It alters the local environmental conditions. So one of the microorganisms may also alter the environmental condition, right? Again, if you go back to the earlier lectures where we talked about the physiology and the environmental condition, how physiology play a role in coordination with the environmental conditions is very important for the growth of microorganisms. So if there is no growth, no infection, right? So for establishment of infection, the growth is very important to be established or to be taken by the microorganisms. So once the microorganisms create an environment where the oxygen availability or depletion of oxygen or pH change, for example, if you have some like mesophiles where we can grow at the range of moderate pH, but if somehow the microorganisms which can produce acid, for example, Helicobacterium, which produce acid, or S mutants, many gram-positive bacteria in the presence of, in the absence of oxygen, right? They can produce the acid. We call aciduracity property they have. So when they produce the acid, the pH will reduce. So when the pH reduce, for the microorganisms which are optimum pH at 6.7 or 8, cannot grow at the low pH like 3 and 4. For example, if you look the vaginal flora or the normal flora of the vagina is called the lactobacillus. It's the major population of the bacteria from the lactobacilli. It maintains the acidic pH of 3 to 4 or between 3 to 5, preventing the Candida albicans. So when the lactobacillus present in the vagina, the Candida albicans is difficult to grow. Therefore, the reduction in the population of lactobacilli through some antibiotic course or through some cream used for antibiotics for some reason, the Candida albicans may got an opportunity to again grow in the absence of lactobacilli. So this is how the relation, we call the antagonism mechanism of these different species in the different environment to grow. The pH become neutral, yeast infection may cause to vaginitis, right? So these are the reason where the microbial pathogenesis established and the interaction of microorganisms to the host under certain environmental condition and their own physiological status. A change in the physiology will definitely affect the other microorganisms to grow or not to grow. In case of intestine, the E. coli produces, which is coliform, produces bacteriocin, right? These bacteriocin is basically sort of a toxin which can inhibit the Salmonella and Shigella. So, presence of a bacteria like E. coli in the intestine, in the colon, is basically protecting various Salmonella species and Shigella species. So, this E. coli protecting the toxic effect of Shigella and Salmonella, and it prevents the food poisoning and toxicity in the stomach. Clostridium difficile. Clostridium difficile is basically the bacteria which is normally suppress the gut microbiota, right? So, the dysbiosis of gut microbiota may take place, all right. Antibiotics can disrupt the balance between the gut microbiome, right, and overgrowth may lead to the diarrhea to the may lead to the fatal colitis. So, these are the conditions, environmental responses, physiological imbalance in the presence of two different species, and so the effect of one species to the other species of bacteria or fungus or different genera to other genera may lead to the effect on the growth of the cells, and that growth is basically affecting the infection control. If the growth is beyond the threshold, infection may establish, but if the growth is not beyond threshold, then then infection may not be established as per the cause postulates. Now, on the other side, what is symbiosis? Symbiosis means the relation between two organisms, could be bacteria, could be fungus, right? Bacteria of the two different species, genera, at least one of them, they're dependent on the other. For example, Candida albicans is growing in the presence of certain bacteria. So, if one of the bacteria is being taken away or is being removed, killed, right, the growth is static, then it may have impact on the other species which is growing in coordination or in presence of these organisms. Now, commensalism, right, it means one benefit, the other unaffected. So, it is kind of a mutual friendship where one of the friend is benefited, but the other may not be benefited, but also not being affected. For example, Staphylococcus epidermidis. Streptococcus epidermidis is basically the bacteria present on the skin, surface of the skin, right? Corynebacteria present on the cornea, on the eye surface of the epidermis of eye. Now, these bacteria are basically in the commensalism mode, or we call they are commensalism type of bacteria, or the phenomena is called commensalism. Now, mutualism is called both of the microorganisms get benefited. For example, there is one microorganism E. coli in the gut and another is produce vitamin K and B, host provide the nutrients. So, it means there is a relation between host and E. coli is good relation. So, E. coli is providing the vitamin K and vitamin B to be synthesized in the host, and host is providing the nutrients to the bacteria in the form of microbial flora and gut. Parasitism. Parasitism is something which promote the pathogenicity or which promote the improvement or expression of the virulence factors or virulence mode of the bacteria. So, parasitism is one of the benefit that expenses of the other host. For example, it may be host, it may be the inhibiting the other bacteria or other organisms. For example, pathogenic bacteria, viruses, coronaviruses, HIV viruses. Then you can have Microbacterium tuberculosis, Microbacterium leprae. There is a large number of list of these kind of pathogens which are present, which may S mutants. Oral cavity provide the environment for the growth of the S mutants, and S mutants is basically become pathogen for the oral cavity and causing dental caries. Opportunistic microorganisms are the microorganisms which are under the opportunism phenomenon or mechanism. Opportunistic opportunism or opportunistic microorganisms means normal microbiota that causes the disease under the certain condition, right. For example, if say for example, I take example of E. coli. E. coli is not pathogenic. Rather, E. coli is beneficial for the human gut to produce various vitamins, and which has become a coenzyme for the various enzyme activity also. It maintains the dysbiosis. It maintain the homeostasis of the microbial flora. Now, opportunistic pathogen means same E. coli, which is normal E. coli, which is beneficial E. coli bacteria, become opportunistic bacteria under certain condition, which is response to the environmental condition. So, such kind of a bacteria or such kind of microorganisms are called the opportunistic microorganisms. The condition favoring for the opportunistic microorganisms are the opportunism phenomena, entry into the different body site. For example, UTI, meningitis, abscess, sepsis. So, through these means they become more pathogenic for the host, especially human or animal host. Host immune suppression. So, example, sometimes patients are under immune suppression state, for example, AIDS patient or cancer patient under the treatment of chemotherapy. They have become immunosuppression mode, or they are immunocompromised patients. So, under the immunocompromised patient, these beneficial microorganisms may also become the pathogenic microorganisms and may cause some disease. For example, in case of AIDS, Pneumocystis jirovecii, this is a bacteria which is promoting in the case of AIDS patients and cause some diseases like pneumonia and lung diseases, cough, cold and other things. It break in skin mucosa. For example, when the skin is break, mucosal membrane, through mucosal membrane it get penetrate. Imbalance of microbiota after antibiotics. So, if after taking antibiotics you see many times the patient may have secondary infection, promotion of the diarrhea. So, this diarrhea is because of the imbalance microbiome or gut microbiome, where the beneficial microorganisms being if ineffected or inhibited or lost their presence in the gut microbiome. So, imbalance of microbiota after the antibiotics. So, this is one thing. Now, pathogenic carriers means like healthy individuals are responsible for protecting themselves from infection of such bacteria. So, if these healthy pathogens, healthy carriers which carry, for example, Microbacterium tuberculosis or Microbacterium leprae, these are the bacteria which carried by many people. Even everybody may have, or every second person may have such kind of infection. So, it means we are the carrier. I can be a carrier for the Microbacterium tuberculosis, but I am not having any TB symptom or any TB established disease. So, when the TB disease will be established, when the person which is carrier become immunocompromised mode, right, or immunosuppress mode, or under treatment of chemotherapy or some antibiotic treatment or some AIDS patients. So, they may have more prone and susceptible for such kind of infection. So, this is called the opportunism. Example is meningitis, then Streptococcus pneumonia, which causes pneumonia, Neisseria meningitidis, which is called meningitis kind of infection in the brain infections. The cooperation among the microorganisms, so through various molecular mechanism, quorum sensing is one of them. So, microbes may work together in the sense of disease responses. Example, periodontal pathogens adhere the better by binding to the oral streptococci colonies on the tooth. So, many periodontal pathogens, S mutans, S bovis, Streptococcus mutans, Streptococcus bovis, these are the gram-positive bacteria which have better opportunity to adhere on the surface. So, they have a good cooperation and coordination with the host. It means they coordinate through the virulence factors. They have a strong virulence factor which may interact with the host system. For example, Streptococci which colonize on the teeth surface, right. On the teeth surface, when they colonize, they have plaque formations, and these plaque formations provided by the host system as a nutrient and as a growth platform, growth opportunity for these bacteria to grow and to cause decay of the tooth and dental caries and some other periodontic infections. So this is called the cooperation among the microorganisms. Now the type of microbial interactions, we say mutualism, communalism, parasitism and antagonism, cooperation mode. So this is the example of some bacteria which we have just discussed. So interaction type like effect on the microbes like benefited in mutualism, both effect A and B. Effect on the microbes A and B both are benefited, we call mutualism kind of a phenomenon. Example, E. coli is intestine where the vitamins are produced and the host and E. coli both are benefited. Hosts are benefited through consuming the vitamins which are produced by the bacteria, and bacteria is growing in the host. Host is not repelling the bacteria, cannot endocytose through the immune system, they allow them to grow. So it means the host is cooperating the bacteria to grow, and so we call the mutualism, benefit each other. Both the organisms, both the systems are benefited. Now in case of commercialism, one of the organisms is benefited, other has no effect, right? Whereas a parasitism, one of the organism is benefited but the other is harmed, right? So for example, pathogenic bacteria, Microbacterium tuberculosis, Microbacterium leprae, various fungus, various viruses and so on. Parasitism is benefited and harmed, and then antagonism. Antagonism is one benefits, other inhibited, right? So it is the we call not as a harmed in case of parasitism, but here it is that two organisms have antagonism mode of mechanism while growing. So it means in the presence of one organisms, the other organisms may not grow safely and get inhibited. So this is called antagonism. Then you have a cooperation mode where both the organisms benefit, enhance, and both benefits, right? It means like they have a good cooperation between each other. One of the organisms enhance the growth of the other organisms. So this is called the cooperation mode. For example, oral streptococci, periodontal pathogens which are well organized, well prepared for the growth, and the preparation is through the host system. Then we have what are the different sites where it works: vagina, intestine, colon. In vagina, we have a normal flora, lactobacillus, which maintain the acidic condition. Then we have pathogens we call Candida albicans, and disruption consequences are vaginitis after antibiotics taking. Now, in case of intestine, we have E. coli which produce the bacteriocin, and this Salmonella shigella is the pathogen which is prevented from this E. coli productions at the site of intestine. Then loss of inhibition, GI infection takes place. Colon is basically part of intestine also, but it has a diverse gut flora, and this gut flora compete and block the receptors for the other microbial pathogens to interact and to adhere on the surface of the gut microbiome, gut flora. Example, Clostridium difficile. This Clostridium difficile is basically the bacteria which is prevented from the infection in the colon, and they produce antibiotics. C. difficile, Clostridium difficile overgrowth will lead to the colitis. So if the colon have diversified gut flora, normal flora, protect the production of the Clostridium difficile, then it means the colitis can be prevented. The opportunistic pathogens are microbes, usual habitat, and opportunistic diseases. E. coli is a microbe, that is bacteria. Usual habitat is a large intestine, colon, and opportunism is UTI, meningitis, abscess. Pneumocystis jirovecii is basically the pneumonia causing bacteria present in the lung, normal healthy lungs, and the pneumonia in AIDS patient, because in AIDS patient this bacteria may grow fast and escape the immune system of the host because of the weak immune system or the suppression of the immune system. Neisseria meningitidis. Neisseria meningitidis is a bacteria which causes meningitis, and respiratory tract infection is causing this. This is the normal habitat for the meningitis. Streptococcus pneumonia is present in the nose and throat, and it causes pneumonia. So, preventing these bacteria from the sites, you can protect the diseases caused by these bacteria. Now, what is infection and how this host parasite infection being established? There are the 4 major postulates defined by the Robert Koch. The same pathogen must be present in every case of diseases. So, the same organism present in every case of the diseases. This is the first and foremost statement of the Koch to establish the infection. The pathogen must be isolated from the disease host and grown in the pure culture. So, the same pathogens can be isolated from the disease host and then again made a culture available for that. The pathogen from the pure culture must cause the disease. So, this pathogen can also cause disease in the susceptible animal when it is inoculated into the susceptible animal. The pathogen must be isolated from the inoculated animal and must shown to be original organism. So, it means the first step is the organism responsible for the infection, right. So, the organism which is isolated from the diseased person or host should be of one kind. Then this can be cultured after inoculation from the host or from the disease patient or the disease site or clinical site. Then the same pathogens can be re-inoculated into the patient, susceptible patient, and cause the same disease. And then the patient, this pathogen can again be isolated from that patient's to cultures of the same kind of isolated pathogen will be characterized on the artificial culture. So, these are the 4 postulates of the Koch. Now, these are the 4 conditions for establishment of infection, or if the conditions appear, then we call them as infection. The classification of a disease is basically we are dividing into type, definitions and example. Communicable disease, contagious disease and non-communicable disease, right. Now, in communicable disease means like spread person to person, like TB, measles, flu, whereas the contagious is a disease where the easily rapidly spread. It means if you remember the COVID-19 pandemic, during COVID-19 pandemic, some of the variants they are called them as a very contagious. Some of the isolates called very highly infectious but less contagious. So, highly infectious means once the infection is spread, the severity is more, it is more virulent. But more contagious means and less virulent means virulence is less, pathogenicity is less, not highly infectious, but spread is very fast from person to person. We call highly contagious. Like chicken pox, measles, non-communicable diseases. Non-communicable disease means they cannot spread from person to person. So, once the host is carrying the disease, they can remain contented or confined to the particular host. It will not spread from host to person, right, due to internal flora or entry from the environment. So, like tetanus, clostridium, until it get infected through personal contact or some other relation. Occurrence of disease is called epidemiology, right. How you understand the epidemiology of a disease, right. So, epidemiology of a disease means like how disease is spreading, whether disease is spreading all across the region, community, globe, right. How much population is being affected by the disease, is the single type of organism responsible for that disease, right, as according to the Koch postulate. So, incidence, new cases during the time period indicated the spread. So, incidence is called one incidence take place and one kind of a disease is spread, like 37,000 AIDS cases in US in 2014. This is called incidence, right? Prevalence. Prevalence means like a total old and new cases at a given time. In a given time, you have certain cases, right? We call it as a burden on that particular community, on that particular region, in particular time window. We call prevalence of the particular strain, prevalence of particular pathogen, or prevalence of particular diseases, right? For 1.5 million AIDS cases in US in 2014, right? The sporadic, endemic, epidemic, pandemic. These are the 4 words which are very closely related but with the differences. So sporadic means occurrence occasionally. Sometimes they occurs. For example, typhoid fever in US. Sometimes it occurs. Again, it has gone. Then endemic is constantly, continuously present of a particular pathogen in a particular population, in a confined population, in a localized population, and the population is known for having that disease. Is called the endemic for that. For example, common cold is endemic. Then the malaria is endemic in certain African countries. Cholera is endemic in certain Bangladesh or Indian subcontinents. Then epidemic. Epidemic means sudden outbreak in an area, right? Like influenza outbreak, COVID-19 outbreak in a particular area. Whereas the epidemic and pandemic, there's a difference. In epidemic, you have a certain area. Say, for example, endemic sudden outbreak of influenza in Aligarh, or sudden outbreak in India, in north part of the India, or south part of the India. So we call the epidemic disease. Now, what is pandemic? Pandemic means worldwide epidemic. It means when this epidemic is a worldwide, spread is all over the world globe, just like a COVID-19 was a pandemic. This is the good example, recent example of the pandemic. Like AIDS is a pandemic, all across the globe it is spread. COVID-19, influenza, they are all a pandemic kind of a disease where the majority of the global population is affected. Not necessarily 100%, but I think majority of the population affected. Now, the severity of the disease, like duration of a disease, what kind of acute disease, chronic disease, subacute disease, latent disease, right? So we have a spread onset, short duration. It's called acute disease, like influenza is acute disease. Then we have a chronic disease. So develop slowly and persist for long time, like a TB, hepatitis B. Then subacute, between acute and chronic, right? Like subacute sclerosis. And then we have sclerosis is one example. Then we have syphilitis, right? Then we have a latent stage. Latent means like a pathogen is being in dormant stage for many years, for short and long time, and then again reactivate after some time through some lytic induction, like in phages or in bacteria, in viruses. Like shingles and herpes viruses, they have latent state, but after 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, or every 1 year, they again appear reactivated. And so this kind of a state we call the latent. So we have a acute state, chronic state, then we have a subacute state, and the latent state. Herd immunity. I mean, it's very common, herd immunity. Herd immunity is the immunity. Large population of the particular community is immune via vaccination or natural infection. Like COVID-19. After 2021, the herd immunity is spread, like more than 50% population are immune with the COVID-19 virus or SARS-CoV-2 virus, and so we call the herd immunity. So once the herd immunity is established, either you through for the same reason the vaccine drive was taken into account, because this vaccine drive make the whole population immune to the disease. So the majority of the population has become immune, and they may not have a disease. And so it may not cause the disease to spread from the one patient to other patient. This is the main cause of the herd immunity. Once the herd immunity is established, the infection is controlled. So it acts as a barrier, it protects non-immune individuals. Then for example, eradication of smallpox, control of polio, measles, they're all kind of a herd immunity. Now, events of host involvement, systemic, focal, sepsis, septicemia, bacteremia, then toxemia, and then we have a viremia. Now, systemic means like a spread via lymph or blood, like measles. Focal is local, infection is spread through, but confined to a particular specific site, for example, intestine, for example, the skin infections or some mechanical injuries lead to some infection. Tonsillitis is again, sinus is again. Sepsis is something, toxic inflammations like sepsis, response to spread of microbial toxins inside that. Then we have septicemia, multiplication of a pathogen in blood, we call septicemia, blood poisoning. Bacteremia, bacteria in blood, not multiplying but they are present in the blood, so we call bacteremia. So septicemia is a one step ahead of bacteremia, like temporary bacteremia after dental works, right? So localized bacterial populations being present. Then toxemia, toxin in the blood, right? Various bacterial toxins, viral toxin, like tetanus toxin. So tetanus is one of the examples. Then we have viremia. Viremia is a virus in blood, like viral infection. Then we have a primary, secondary, and subclinical conditions where we have definition like initial acute infections is called primary, like influenza. Then secondary we have opportunistic infections. Then we have pneumonia after flu. Then we have PCP and AIDS. Subclinical is a non-noticeable illness which is generally not noticeable, but the symptoms persist. For example, hepatitis A carriers, poliovirus carriers, which will not appear, but they are the carriers for the diseases. Stages, the stage of the disease progression, incubation, prodromal illness, decline, like then we have a convalescence. So all these descriptions of these incubation is time between the first symptoms to the end of the host, like so between the infection and the first system is called the incubation. It varies from pathogens to dose and to host responses. Then we have a prodromal conditions. In prodromal stage we have early mild symptoms like aching and some malaise. Illness is called most severe disease with symptoms like which has a clear signs and symptoms. Then decline is like symptoms declining, subsides, patients vulnerable to secondary infections. Then we have convalescence. Convalescence is basically recovery and return from the symptoms to the normal state. So these are some disease progression conditions present. Then we have host-related age, gender, genetics, sickle cell trait versus malaria. So predisposing factors as host-related factor, then environmental factors, behavioral factors, and medical factors and immunity status. For example, lack of vaccinations may cause some disease, weak immune system may cause some disease. Then we have pre-existing illness, already some secondary diseases, secondary infection is present, so we call them chemotherapy. Improper vaccination may cause this problem. Then we have a behavior like lifestyle, occupation, religion practices may sometimes lead to some diseases, some promotion of a disease like climate change, weather, crowding, poor nutrition, fatigue and all. So these are some predisposing factors are called, which may connect to the diseases and some related infections which may cause the sometime problem. Now, so this is the book you can Microbiology and Introduction, where you will find some of the introduction and some basic concept of the host parasite interactions and how hosts are interacting with the parasites and what different kind of parasites are there, what is the physiology of the parasites, what are the environmental conditions of parasite, how these conditions promote the disease, promote the symptoms, what are the symptomatic conditions, what are the asymptomatic conditions. So all these things can be covered with this lectures, and I think the main message from this lecture is that host parasite interaction, establishment of infection, and what are the conditions to establish infections, and how infections can be cured after understanding the host parasite relation, which we'll talk in some other lecture. Okay, so this is all for today's. Thank you very much.